And this conversation is just not for us in the studio, but you're welcome to join us from home via Twitter, or as we open up the phone lines, you're welcome to contribute and let us know what your thoughts are on, well, what we'd call retrospect, basically looking at how we have done our job. And joining me to have that conversation, I have two gentlemen here. I have to my extreme right, Patrick Gadara, who's a communications consultant, also a cartoonist. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
Okay, and we also have Eric Odur, who is the Secretary General for the Kenya Union of Journalists. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Mike.
All right, gentlemen, let's talk about what has been, of course, the main thing the last 2 days is the launch of the manifestos. And of course, for us, it is, well, more of a wait and see. Let's see what they have to launch. But after that, we had to pick that up, and we are sometimes supposed to be the ones who create the agenda. Is this an opportunity for us now to move politics from personality-based kind of politics to now issue-based? Let me start with you, Gadara.
Yes, definitely. It's an opportunity to interrogate what the parties are proposing, what the various party and coalition are pushing, what the agenda is, what solutions to the problems that Kenyans have they're proposing. I think that it's sad that it's come so late. I think we should have been discussing what their ideas were all the way back from when we started the primaries, you know, and stuff. But I suppose better late than never. We have like, what, is it 2 or 3 months? Actually, less than 2 months.
Well, we actually have
it's 40 days, isn't it?
Yeah, 40 days.
You know, to the election. I'm hoping that the next few weeks we will really devote it to drilling down to the basics, the philosophies behind the ideas, but also, more importantly, what are the implementation plans for this? I was quite encouraged by the fact that yesterday NASA was saying they've got an actual implementation plan to accompany their manifesto. I didn't hear that about Jubilee. But this provides an opportunity for us to then look at what are the ideas going to cost? Where do they think they're going to get the money? You know, is it going to be shifted around? Is there some other things they're going to cut, you know, and stuff? So to see whether these are actual promises that can be implemented or it's more pie in the sky as we're used to in politics.
All right. Eric, your thoughts on how we pick it up from here? Given that for Kenyans, I'm not sure whether Kenyans actually listen to the content and the details of the manifesto, or we are more interested in, you know, he said, she said.
Yeah, I think I've been following the conversation from yesterday because, first of all, I attended the launch of NASA manifesto because trade union leaders had been invited so that we could be able to interrogate the manifesto and look at how they're going to impact on the economy, how is it going to affect the workers. And I think now the discussion should now focus on the implementation. Because I know this country has always had good documents. We always had good manifesto. We always had good policy. But now the problem has always been the implementation. Remember the session on paper number 10 that actually was supposed to transform this country into a middle-income economy. And probably there is a suggestion that other countries could have borrowed that and they have used this to prosper. So the issue is implementation. So we need to look at how both parties are going to implement the manifesto. Of course, Jubilee, most likely, I don't think if they were launching manifesto, but I think they were just bringing the scorecard, and most likely what they are going to do, just telling us this is what we were able to do since 2013, and this is what we are going to do. So for NASA, I think they now need to concentrate more on the content because the launch was more fanfare. And that's why you can see the conversation about how it was organized. Now as the journalists we have to set the agenda, like you said before, on how these issues, the 6-point agenda is going to be implemented, the corruption. Are they going to free themselves from the captors of the state? Are they going to make sure that those people who have been implicated in corruption allegations before are not part of the government? If it comes to the job creation, how are they going to create jobs? Where are these jobs going to come from? If they're talking about equality, how are they going to bridge the gap? The economic growth, because I heard Salam Dawi talking about they are going to to sustain the 7% economic growth. At least for them, they were honest. They were not telling us about having a 2-digit or a double-digit economic growth. So how are they going to grow the economy? Where are these? Are they going to create wealth for Kenyans? So that's where now the conversation is going to come to focus on.
I've got to jump in here. Two quick things. First, I think we really need in this country to get away from this idea that we have good policies that are not implemented. There is no such thing as a good policy that's not implemented. It's simply not a policy. You know,
but it is a policy by virtue of the fact that it has been crafted and put on paper.
It's just a statement. A policy is that which they actually do. You know, and unfortunately, for us, they really don't do really good things. And secondly, even to go back even to what he said about the session of paper number 10, this actually was a pretty bad policy. Was really roundly criticized by the TJRC report, if you read it. You know, because it's actually what led to much of the inequality and marginalization that we have there. It is a policy that was actually implemented. You know, that was pretty bad. I think, but I agree that we need to now look at the detail of these plans. For us to do that, these plans have to be available. It is rather unfortunate now. Yesterday when NASA launched their manifesto, I was looking online. Where is it? Where can I download it? You know, and there was
isn't that the basis of a launch? A launch is like opening. Now from,
exactly,
from
so
now
it should be available. You know. But in fact, they said we are launching the online version, if you remember. You know, well, I couldn't find the online version. I'm hoping it is available. I'm hoping the implementation matrix that Professor Anyang' Nyong'o was talking about yesterday on your Kivumbi show, you know, that it is there, it is available, so then we can actually interrogate them. We can actually sit down and go through them line by line. What do they propose? You know, where is this money coming from, etc., rather than just sort of speaking in these generalities. The second thing, I mean, the other thing I'd say about the NASA manifesto, which is both good and not necessarily bad, is that they were more restrained in what they were promising. You know. Now, that's good in the sense that 7% growth is not overly ambitious. You know. But it also, if we look at our Vision 2030, which they kept referring to, Vision 2030 required us to be growing at 10% from 2010, 7 years ago. So if all we are aiming for is 7%, then why are we talking about Vision 2030? We're not going to achieve it, you know, as it is. So again, it's got to be grounded in reality, in what's actually there, rather than promising one thing, but then how the numbers add up to get you to there.
It doesn't seem to catch up with that.
Yeah.
All right, Eric, how do we move this conversation in terms of now creating agenda? Because we have Jubilee and NASA who've launched their manifesto, but then again, let's not forget from our end, it's not just the two parties that we have. We have other presidential candidates who have their manifestos. Have we done a fair job in, you know, bringing out what the rest of the other candidates have? Or is it just a Jubilee NASA affair?
Of course, we must always be fair to other presidential candidates, but even as we are fair to them, we must also be fair to the Jubilee and NASA. It is a fact that the next president is either going to will either come from NASA or Jubilee.
But how is that a fact? We don't know.
It is a fact. You know, that's the problem is sometimes we like living an utopian kind of arrangement whereby we want to deny the reality. But if you look at the political reality, the president is going to come either from Jubilee and from the NASA. But that does not stop us from giving other presidential candidates opportunity also to articulate what they are likely to offer Kenyans, so that even in the future we can say that, okay, in 2017, there was this presidential candidate who had a very good document. Why can't we also go to it? Even as the media, we try to interrogate this, because I can also correlate with what his other presidential candidates have. So having said that, I also need to inform Gadara that a policy is just a guide, and we'll always have it. And the problem that we have in this country, and even the criticism that has been there, even if you look at the issues of benchmarking. I remember, and I've read somewhere, that these are the countries, the Asian tigers, We used to have benchmarking trips there. And with the time, actually, our members of parliament even denied opportunity to go there because as you guys already have enough document in your country, why can't you implement them?
What you
exactly. So the problem in this country is implementation. NASA can give us a very beautiful document, but so long as this document is not implemented, we are not going anywhere. We are talking about Vision 2030. You can see that we are not implementing it.
Short.
And it was a very good document. If you look at even the pillars of Vision 2030, it was going to transform this country, but we're not implementing it.
But it's not a policy,
exactly,
that's my point.
Yeah, so, but it's just a guide. It's just supposed to guide you on it's a document that where we are and where do we want to go and how are we going to get there. So that's what a document is supposed to guide. Whether it's a plan or it's a document or it's a plan or a policy, it doesn't matter. What matters is how are you going to implement it and how are you going to get to where you want to be. It's like a vision. Yeah.
All right, Gadara. Now, moving the agenda as the members of the Fourth Estate, here we have now we're calling documents. We could argue whether it's policy or documents. Let's just leave it at the fact that it's documents that have been put forward with a plan. How do we help Kenyans go through, and the electorate generally, go through the documents to scrutinize what is it that works for them, number one, and two, with retrospect, how do we, the difference, if somebody said that if you look at the NASA document and the Jubilee document, both of them, if implemented to the letter, are extremely wonderful documents that would change the lives of Kenyans. But there's a trust issue. Who do we trust?
Well, first, I'm not sure that they're extremely wonderful documents that would change the lives of Kenyans. I would really dispute that. I think we need to look at their content. And first, the first step...
On what grounds would you be disputing that they would actually be
beneficial to Kenyans? They do offer certain remedies, let me say. First, let's take the one that's been discussed most, which is free secondary education. Well, free primary education didn't work out that well for us. In fact, free primary education has demolished schools, not built them up.
Maybe because of the implementation process, it may not be the issue may not be the free education per se. It could be the way it was implemented.
How they implemented it, they told you, we'll give you free primary education from next year. We didn't ask them plans, how will you hire teachers? We didn't ask all of this stuff. You see, the policy itself was flawed from the beginning. It had not been thought through. And instead of fixing it, we're not hearing them saying, let us sort out the problems with FPE. We are hearing them, let us export FPE to secondary school. So let's not assume that these are nice documents. These are not good prescriptions. Many of them are not good prescriptions. SGR was not a good prescription when it was proposed. Was not. So don't just make that assumption. The question we should be asking ourselves is, what problem do we want to solve? Then not really being sort of railroaded into what they want us to talk about, but what are our actual problems? And then now we can pick apart the manifesto and ask, do they actually solve our problems? Or is it something that we are being given that solves the politicians' problem?
I think let me just intervene. I think the problem is not having this policy is not being good. To me, I agree with these policies, both from NASA and both from Jubilee. The issue is implementation. And what we should be now interrogating, like we started the conversation, we as the Fourth Estate must now start setting agenda on how are they going to implement these promises. Free secondary education is not is something that actually going to be achieved. It's only that we now need to, now as a stakeholder in the education industry, we need now to participate in this process and also be part of it, because even the Constitution allows public participation, so that you can also help in terms of implementation.
But even before we get there, we've been told free primary and secondary education, which is being promised by both NASA and Jubilee.
No, wait, Mike, you can't say I agree with both Jubilee and NASA. They're proposing different things. NASA is saying everything is going to be free, whether it's your uniform, whether it's your desk, all of that stuff is going to be free. Jubilee is saying tuition is going to be free. These are two different things. So don't say, yes, I agree with both. Which one do you choose and why?
Okay.
let me just respond to that. When NASA says that everything is going to be free, they are telling us that this is how we are going to raise the revenue, because it is possible, so long as they are able to generate revenue that is going to finance
they say there's an extra 60 billion.
Exactly, that they're going to use that.
I want to see how
then Jubilee tells you that what we are going to give you is a tuition.
Right.
And then as a parent, then that what they're telling you that for us this is what is supposed to give you. Then if they can't raise the money, just listen. So that if they cannot raise the revenue to finance fully the secondary education, there's no problem with that. They are telling you that for us as Jubilee, this is what we're able to, because what we are looking at is access. So long as this can allow more children to access secondary education. Are these not two
different plans?
Yeah, they're two different plans, but achieving...
When you say I'm agreeing with both,
yes.
This is where I'm a bit lost.
And herein lies the challenge now, because at the end of the day, if we as members of the Fourth Estate already have an argument internally as to the understanding of the document, how then do we expect the electorate to be able to pick the newspaper, go online, or pick whatever documents that we have to articulate and see this is actually distinctly the difference between the NASA agenda and Jubilee agenda?
So that is how now the Fourth Estate comes in and you give the balance. You tell that this is what NASA is saying and they're proposing, and this is how they are going to do it. This is how it's going to impact you. Then you look at what Jubilee is offering. Jubilee is offering, and this is what they are going to pay. They are going to pay tuition. That means that the boarding and any other expenditure that is going to be incurred will be taken by the parent, so that everybody is able to understand. So that then you look at the quality that. Are they going, if NASA is going to give you, they're also going to increase the number of teachers in school? Is Jubilee going to increase the number of teachers in school? What about the infrastructure? NASA said very well that infrastructure, primary infrastructure, is going to be taken over by the county government. Then Jubilee also should be also interrogating that, how are you going to deal with the issue of infrastructure? Because we've seen in schools or in classrooms whereby students or learners do not even have desks. They don't even have seats. They don't even have books. So how are you going to address that if you're only going to give
that's what I'm saying.
So that is how you interrogate, and that is our work as the Fourth Estate, to give the balance. You give, this is what NASA is offering, this is what Jubilee is offering.
I agree totally. I mean, it's about distinguishing the two things that they were saying, But we don't start with the assumption that they're saying good things. We've got to interrogate them and to see whether they actually make sense. So for example, with NASA saying they're going to have labs instead of having the one laptop per child program, but they're going to scrap that and move everything into labs that are then in schools. That's one thing. That's different from what Jubilee is proposing. Is offering. And we've got to look at the dynamics and the money involved, and what the policy actually offers. Is it good for us or is it not? We've got to interrogate it, I think, from that point of view. I think also, when it comes to things like the SGR, it was funny yesterday when I was listening to Anyang' Nyong'o having his debate with Amos Kimunya. How you're seeing these parties very quickly switch sides. So now that NASA has said we want to electrify the SGR, Jubilee is now saying, no, but we don't need big speeds on SGR. But remember, they were hanging a few months ago. That was the reason for it. Let's move these things very quickly. Now they're saying we don't need to move right that fast. What are they called? NASA, who are being advised by ND, who's argued a lot of times that you don't need to move freight very fast, are talking of electrifying SGR so we can have very high speeds. These are people just switching positions. And we've seen this happen before. We've got to pin them down and ask them, don't forget they made statements prior to this. And go back to those statements. That actually tells you how honest they are about the things they are proposing, and that they actually believe in them or just giving us a show.
All right. You see, if sometimes it's not just about going to the statements that are made before. It's about how practical is it and how are they going to achieve that. Because if they are talking about having an electrified railway system, do we even have enough energy to power that? That's now the conversation we're supposed to be having. Because even if they had promised us before, but we did not have the capacity, we did not have enough energy that is going to be used to power the engines, then the promise they are giving to Kenyans is a failed promise.
Precisely. But that's what I'm saying, is they give a promise now. So we've got to, of course, interrogate about how feasible it is, but also go back and look at their statements. Let's not forget these are people who come with a history, all of them.
All of them have come with a history.
Precisely. So let's look at whether
Eric,
those positions are consistent.
The third angle of this, of course, as in the newsroom, we had to wait for them to launch their manifestos because we can't preempt. But now that we have the manifestos, the third angle could be now to interrogate, and I think, Gadara, you alluded to that, the fact that this is what they're offering. But what is the problem of the Kenyan on the ground? What is it that Kenyans really require and need? Because at the end of the day, maybe that's how we can set the agenda and call them out or call their bluff. Because if we follow just what the politicians have told us, then obviously all we're doing is we're doing a comparison. But if we're able to articulate and say, look, number one thing that is ailing Kenyans right now is food, basically. What is their policy on food? And maybe interrogate that.
I think number one, I think on I don't know who informed politicians that when they want to launch their manifesto, they do it at night, because actually it doesn't give people enough time to interrogate, and actually even the media, because today, again, we'll have news of the day, so we might not even have enough time to interrogate this manifesto. So, but anyway, what I think is that in this country, we know the problem in this country. All of us live in this country. These politicians live in this country. We live in this country. We know the problems that are there. What we need to do is just priority. The problem has always been the priority and false promises, whereby we promise we are going to do this, and these are the problems. Like now, even Jubilee, they told us in 2013 that we are going to have a food-secure country. But right now, you see people are struggling. You see people are queuing. Actually, I'm told nowadays people make calls to find out where are we going to get unga. Today is in such a supermarket B, that's where unga is available. But we were promised before that we are going to have enough food in this country. So that means that even in 2013, Jubilee, they already known that the problem in this country is we do not have enough food. So this is what we are going to do to ensure that Kenyans are able to access and get enough food. But that does not happen. So the issue is implementation, and I still insist on the implementation. So what we can do as a force instead, we should always don't lose track of what has been promised, because we only realized recently that by there we don't have food. So that is now when it became now an agenda in the media that the food, there's no food and there's no unga on the shelves of the supermarket. So what the challenge we supposed to have with the media is that once these guys take over the office, we must always keep them on check to ensure they deliver some of these promises.
I think that what you said at the beginning was quite right, that we've got to identify what our Kenyans' problems are, not to assume that the manifestos deal with these problems. I already spoke about the free primary education, which none of them mentions. Yet it is a mess. We are graduating guys at class 8 who cannot do class 2 maths, class 2 English. That's the reality that we have. So how will they fix that? Not much discussion of it. It's always about all this new stuff that they're giving us, rather than fixing the actual problem we have. When it comes to something like Somalia, now there is talk about withdrawing, etc. There's NASA proposing a phased withdrawal from Somalia beginning 90 days. That would be what, in about November. Yet next year, AMISOM is supposed to start our phased withdrawal. Are they not aware of this, stuff? And why did we go in the first place? What is it that we wanted to achieve? Has that been achieved? So that we are now withdrawing from it, stuff. And if we withdraw, then what happens in Somalia? All these are questions that need to be asked, because the idea that if we just withdraw, suddenly all will be hunky-dory and would have terrorist attacks, I think is a bit of a fairy tale.
Okay.
So again, what are our problems? How do they fix them? If it is police, it's not just simply about equipping police. Read the Ransley report, read the TJRC report. The culture of policing is itself the problem. The fact that the police think they are there to protect the state from the citizens. How do you fix that? What's happened to police reforms? But all they come and tell us is we will equip police better. But you equip them to do what? To harass us more?
The how-to. The how-to is missing. Exactly. The link of the how-to.
Or even the why. That's it. Yeah. So our problems aren't being fixed. They are giving us remedies to their issues, not to our problems.
I think I heard them when they were saying very clearly, when they went out to fix the issues of police, saying that they want to transform police from a force into a service. So that means that we are going to have a number of reforms, issues that are going to be taken into consideration to ensure that they achieve that. What I think what you need to do is just go through the document, because I know it's now available. I can share it with you.
Oh, yeah,
Please.
please.
I can share it with you so that you can go through, because what they were doing, they were just trying to highlight what they are going to do. Maybe they did not go into details of how they are going to do
they
it.
didn't cover
Yeah,
most
they didn't
of
cover
it,
most,
And-
because they were just giving the
and
highlights.
probably that's now where we come in, because we'd like to find out and break down. And let's look at another issue that has bedeviled this country for a long time, corruption. And of course, both sides of the divide will come out. And let me not even say both sides. All presidential candidates are going to come out and say that they're going to deal with corruption. But have we highlighted clearly what really is the cancer, as it were, that ails us from the inside? Because it seems to just never be dealt with. Maybe starting with you, Gadara.
Well, very quickly, just before I get to that, there's a question you had asked about other candidates and their manifestos. I think it's very, very important we highlight those. Not just because that, that they might win, which is highly unlikely, but that their ideas might influence the debates that we then have. You know, so it's important we go to that. So people like Kukot and everybody else, you know, let's get the ideas there. To corruption, I've been saying for a long time that our corruption and the corruption we see is a result of the system we have. It is incentivized by the system we have. It's not the case that Kenyans are born congenitally corrupt.
When you say the system, what exactly do you mean?
But
Because
the
at the end
system
of the
is
day,
your governance system, the governance structure, the state.
That leaves nobody
itself.
accountable.
No,
When we
no,
say
actually, what it does is leaves specific people accountable. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The state itself, and the way the state is structured, the one that we inherited from the British, you know, we have failed to reform that. That was the central finding of the TJRC Commission. If we go and read it, it's still the same one that we got from the British. So there are certain people who we vested with the responsibility to help us reform it. They never did it. You know, there are people who preside over that state who actually actively stop the process of reforming it. You know. And then what they do is, instead of them taking responsibility for the shenanigans that then come up, they say, no, it's not us, it is you people. You know, you, the guys we are stealing from, are to blame for the fact that we are stealing from you. You know, that's the whole discourse of saying that we as a society are corrupt. We are not as a society corrupt. You know, and all these stereotypes were said about people like the Germans, were said about people like the whatever, even the Singaporeans. You know. And they're rubbish. It is the system itself that is imposed upon them that is corrupt. You know. Now, if we are to have a discussion about removing corruption, you know, what I would want to hear from them is how are they going to reform that system. I like that NASA yesterday mentioned the TJRC report and saying that they're going to have, was it another commission to implement it or something? You know. It was supposed to be, when it was written, when the Act was written, it was supposed to be a self-implementing report, as in there are recommendations that are supposed to be automatically implemented. Well, that was thrown out.
It seems Gadara is so much in love with the TJRC report.
But the TJRC report, by the way, is a bloody important report. It's one of the most important reports we have produced in this country.
Yet it has not been implemented. But to use your words, it's a document.
Yeah, that's why the implementation is a big problem, because it's a good report. I agree with you. But what I would like to put it this way, that the problem of corruption in this country is leadership. You only need to have a good leader who is committed to fighting corruption.
But let me pause you there, because the reason I'm asking this question is we have Jubilee having said they're going to deal with corruption. They've had their 5 years. We've seen what has happened. We have NASA now coming in and promising Kenyans they're going to deal with corruption. However, we can look at each of those leaders, and they have been in government one type or the other. What have they left that Kenyans can say, we trust you, we trust you? And maybe is that where we come in and literally highlight and say, okay, Kenyans, these are the people promising to fight corruption? Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It starts with the leadership. We have got a president who is promising that are going to fight corruption. It's the same president who has said, Mutaka nifanye nini. I can't do it. My office is the most corrupt offices in this country. So if the government has been, the Jubilee government has been unable to fight corruption for the first 4 years, I don't see it fighting corruption the next 5 years if they are given another term. The same with NASA. These are the people who have been in the system. What did they do? Because if you look at everybody, interrogate all the principals in NASA,
in one way or another, you'll realize that the ministry or the dockets that were heading had some serious issues with the corruption. So the issue is political will. Maybe they can tell Kenya that, okay, fine, we did not have the political will then to fight corruption. This time around, we have it, we are going to fight corruption. Because right now, what you could see is the blame game. And I can assure you, next time when they come, they'll also be blaming the Constitution. Actually, when I've been listening to the issue about corruption, everybody is blaming the Constitution. Oh, you know, the powers were taken away from my office, therefore, so-and-so is supposed to fight the corruption. Unless now they tell us that, okay, fine, now I'm going to take political responsibility to ensure that the corruption actually is eliminated or reduced in the government.
I think if we're going to sit and wait for a good leader to come and fix our system, we're going to be in real problems. We need to be insisting on reforming our systems. You know, I totally agree that we also need to look at the past of these guys and their records, you know, when they promise certain things. So people like Raila, who were in the NARC government, Raila has once himself, as you can read in the papers, boasted that he saved Moi when government wanted to take his, the stuff he had stolen. You know, that doesn't seem to me like fighting corruption. You know, we've seen with Jubilee how, you know, corruption has flourished amongst them. And we've got to understand that there is really little incentive at the top for these guys to fight corruption because they benefit a great deal from it.
But then,
you know?
should
so
this be
our
an
question
opportunity?
should be for us, you know, as a citizenry, you know, how do we think we can change systems so that the incentives for them are to actually to actually carry out that fight, you know, and then force them to address that. You know, for as long as all we do is try and play musical chairs at the top, you know, or, you know, switch Raila for Kibaki or switch Uhuru for whoever, that's not going to take us anywhere, you know.
Okay.
Fix the fundamental system that's
But even if fixing the system can only happen on 8th of August.
Not really. Actually, not really. And this brings me actually to another...
And maybe that's where we go wrong, because here we are as Kenyans possibly waiting for this big change, this dramatic change that's going to take place on the 8th of August. So from the 10th, we are a free country, we have food, and this
is the point I wanted to make. Because he's talking about changing the system. How do you change the system? The system is changed by the leaders who are there. Because these are the leaders actually who run the system. Because if you keep...
How did we get
if you continue having the same people in the same system, the system will remain the same. Unless you're now saying that we are now going to have a revolution.
But Eric, the question is here, if you say we are changing the people and changing the system, are we really changing these people, or are we just recycling?
We're just recycling them, and that's the problem. That's why I'm saying that that's why the voting on August is very simple. Because as a citizen, the biggest tool that you have that you can use or change a political system is your vote.
No, it's not.
So long as if you do not vote in the right leadership,
no, it is
you'll not have a good system.
Gadara seems to disagree. Gadara, what else can the citizenry use if it's not the vote?
Again, a history lesson. In 1990s, we did not use the vote to bring reform. It is not the most powerful tool you have. So your participation is the most powerful tool. It's the fact that you can make noise, you can go out on the streets if you need to be. You know, you can engage your MP. All these are modes of participation. Elections are just one and another one, not even the most important one. Don't forget, dictatorships have elections. Kenya, throughout the Moi dictatorship, had elections. You know, what did they change?
Nothing.
You know, so the thing is, we should be careful about putting too much focus on the election date itself and on the election itself.
And of course, that has been probably
what we
pushed
need
more
to
by
do
politicians.
is to look at what is the plan, what happens in between the 5 years between elections. And that is when we should be looking to have the strongest impact. You know, voting in new leaders is of limited utility. In fact, the way elections are structured now, it is very much about the benefits that the people who get elected acquire, you know, rather than what we as a people get. So very little changes because we vote.
All right.
Us.
We need to wind up, and there's a question here coming from Victor, and he says, has the state, including adverts, captured the media? Has the state, including the adverts, captured the media? Looking at how the manifesto launches were covered, including denying Kenyans prime time. It's like we've put so much emphasis on the launch of the manifesto to a point where even primetime news may be affected. And there's also the state adverts, Eric, maybe as we wind up.
Yeah, I think I said before that I don't know who advised the politicians that probably manifestos are supposed to be launched at night and not during the daytime, so that Kenyans can get opportunity to interrogate them, so that when we jump into another subject, we already understood that. I think the issue of advertising is a problem in the media industry, because the media, again, also relies so much on the revenue they generate from the advertising to run for their operations. But again, I think the law was there that actually, I don't know whether it was changed, because Duale was trying to say how to change to allow the state to advertise. So advertising is a big problem. I agree with the concern that advertising is becoming a very big problem. But again, it's now a very delicate balancing act, because again, the media also relies on the revenue they generate from the advertising for the operation. So it's a very delicate balancing act.
All right, as we wind up, Gatara.
I think that over this period, the media has been complicit in corruption and abuse of public resources to campaign. I think the PDU ads, Presidential Delivery Unit ads, which are government ads being run now, are atrocious. They are against, by the way, the Election Offences Act, which forbids government from advertising its achievements during the campaign period, specifically, but also by including terms like Jubilee delivers, Uhuru 2017 in the ads, are actually campaigning for Jubilee. And the fact that our media agree to run these ads simply because they get their 30 pieces of silver, tells me that they are not really interested in their role as watchdogs for Kenyans.
All right, we'll have to wind it up right there, gentlemen, because of time. Thank you very much, Eric Gadara, who is a communication consultant, and also Eric Odur, who is the Secretary General for Kenya Union of Journalists. That is the Newsrooms. Thank you also for sending in your tweets. We'll go through them before we wind up the show. For now, we want to take a short break. We will be right back on KTN News. For KTN Home, we say goodbye. It's time for Life in Style.